Hey, this is Mel with another podcast edition of Conversations with America. And I hope all of you had a wonderful Tuesday. Had a great Tuesday. It has been, depending on who you ask, I'm sure it has been a wonderful day for me, I would say, here in the city of Houston, because for the first time in a long time, in months, it has felt like fall. And I'm enjoying this nice, cool weather. I know it won't stick around for many more months, but not even weeks, not even days. Tomorrow it's supposed to be back to 70 or something, 70 something. So it was nice to have the weather a bit cold, not cold, cool on today. It was nice to have that at work, that nice, lovely, cool weather. But you know, a lot is going on still in the news, and there's always a lot to talk about. So much is going on internationally, nationally. A lot is happening here in the U.S. And so I just want to stop by. I know it's late. It's like 11 something at night, and I wanted to do this before I actually head off to bed, because I'm thinking about this and maybe I should wait. So there's a possibility that it will be a part 2, just in case, because I don't want to ramble too much. And that's what happens when we do things late at night. You know, you have a conversation and your brain is conversing all by itself and so forth. And so that could happen. But tonight I want to talk about something that has been in the news, not necessarily for the last few weeks. Well, it has been, but it didn't just come about in the last few weeks. But it's something that's been in the news for over a year. But it's sort of getting some more momentum, or it's sticking around, it's staying stronger. And despite what happened over the weekend, it doesn't diminish the fact that it's still around. And that is the conversation that I think a lot of us have had, whether we're having, I don't think we're having the conversation with people that may not see it the way we do, but we are having that conversation amongst people who believe the same as we do, and that is the conversation of Black Lives Matter. And it's one of those touchy things, because how far do we go with that? Do we dismiss it? That's the dangerous thing. There has been a lot of complaints because there are people who are offended when others come out with all lives matter. And what do we mean by that when we say all lives matter? Or what do we mean when we say Black Lives Matter? And it depends on who you're talking to as to who takes it what way and who's offended by what. And then there's also the other one, Blue Lives Matter. And a whole lot is going on in this nation, and a lot of unrest. And if we're not careful, the truth is, because we're not talking to one another, we're not sitting down and actually having conversations with one another, we are misunderstanding each other, or we're becoming more distant, we're becoming a lot more agitated by things, because we're just not understanding each other. We're not getting that understanding of what we need to understand. And so I was thinking the other day, I have the privilege, I've talked to our church a few times. I have the opportunity to address the congregation sometimes. And so I have talked to our church. I know even last year, during the month of February, coming to the end of, we don't actually celebrate in our church Black history. What we do is we celebrate the contributions of Blacks in American history. Because for one, and this is another subject, and maybe I'll talk about this another time, but just briefly, I have a problem with the idea of Black history. Now, I struggled with that for a while because I grew up celebrating Black history, and I enjoyed it. And it was something I look forward to every year because, for one, here in Houston on TSU, or 90.9, actually, the radio station, KTSU, every Sunday, in February, we would hear the late Congresswoman Barbara Jordan. So I look forward to hearing her speeches, even though I didn't share her political beliefs. but I enjoyed hearing her voice, a wonderful speaker, a wonderful orator. And so there were things like that. And it was a time that you sort of reflect back on history that had something to do with you. And so as I got older, I started to struggle with the whole idea of Black history and so forth. And what I came to the conclusion of, and people may not agree with me, but this is the way I like to look at it, it's really American history. And when we take and remove and say Black history, what we do is we diminish our story as if it's less than, or it's separate from the other story, the American story. And then it's easy for people to dismiss us because we are not a part of their story. And the truth is, you cannot have American history without Black history. And so it's not separate. It's one story. It's one history. But there are contributions made by various ethnic groups. And that makes the American story. Otherwise, you just have this whitewashed or this whitish story of a nation. And we all know that's not the case. Of course, that's not what I want to linger on. But last year, during our celebration of the contributions, and we celebrate contributions of various ethnic groups at our church. So it's not just the contributions of Blacks. We celebrate the contributions of Asian Americans. And of course, that's 50-something countries, I believe. So it's kind of hard to pick that one out. But we celebrate that and Jewish Americans and so forth and so on. So last year, I was talking and I brought up the subject of Black Lives Matter. And I knew it was touchy for our congregation because we have people from different political beliefs, and that is going to happen in a church. And people look at things differently. They see things quite differently when you're talking about issues such as this. And so I'm talking to them, and I said to them in my conversation about Black Lives Matter, if Black lives really matter, who do they matter to first? And I think that's very important. When we're talking about Black Lives Matter, yes, I am all in agreement, and I know that's very un-Republican or very unconservative to say. I am 100% in agreement that Black lives matter. But my point is that I cannot convince someone else that my life matters if I don't first believe that my life matters. So if I want other people to take me seriously on the subject, on the topic that Black lives matter, then that means I have to believe that it matters first. And what happens in the community that represents me, the community that looks most like me, has to concern me first. If I'm not concerned about what happens in the community when I do things, then I really cannot expect other people who have no relationship to that community, whom I've distanced myself from, I cannot expect them to be concerned about what's happening in my community, and then only be concerned when it involves them misbehaving in our community. And I know there are people who will disagree with me on that, but I think we really need to be honest with ourselves when we're talking about Black Lives Matter. Do we really believe that? Do we really, are we agitated when we see in our community the large number of young people going to elementary school and then realizing that number that goes to elementary school, all of them will not go to junior high, and all of those who go to junior high will not go to high school, or if they do, they are not expected to graduate in that same number. So you can have 800 students enroll in freshman class, and 4 years later, you will have a graduating class of 125. That should concern us if Black lives really matter. That should upset us as a community. Are we really concerned about that? And being honest with myself, I can't say that I'm actually because if I'm concerned, I can say in my heart I'm concerned. But if I'm really concerned, then what am I doing to give back to my community? And something has come up recently, and I saw that there's a way for me to go back to the school that I graduated from and volunteer my time, because I'm starting to realize that I have to be concerned first. I can't expect other people to be concerned about my community when they're not here. They're not in this community. It's not who they are. It's who we are. And so as Black people, we have to be concerned about what our graduating classes what it looks like. How many of our students are actually going to school in junior high? How many students actually go to school every single day? Are we concerned about the kids who are at home alone from let's say 3:30 until 6 or 7 or 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, because their parents are either working or they're out doing whatever they're doing? Are we concerned about those issues? Are we really coming into the community to make our communities better? Are the schools being made better? Are religious institutions and religious affiliations and groups and churches, are we working to make our community better? Because if Black Lives Matter, then where are the Black leaders? The Black leaders. Does it really matter to Black leaders when we commit crimes against one another? Not when someone who is not Black commits a crime against one of us. That's not when we need to have our leaders come into our community. That's not when we need them to come in and to parade and become the great messiahs and the great Moses of the community. They should be in the community when things are happening amongst us. When we are disrespecting one another, when we are killing one another. I just finished a wonderful book about the civil rights movement, We've Got a Job. And it's about the 1963 Birmingham Children's March and how the children were involved. And one of the amazing things is seeing all of these leaders, these Black leaders that came into the community and that came into Birmingham and that were doing things. And I've thought about it, the way things are happening in our Black communities today, that if Dr. King were alive, just listening and reading this book and going through this book and going through other documents and other books, I don't think Dr. King would take the same approach that our Black leaders are taking. I think he would be extremely hard on the Black community themselves. He would be hard on us to do better towards ourselves. And I don't think he would be much loved, because when you see him during the civil rights movement, he wasn't the beloved Dr. King that he is now. He is a martyr, and so we love him, we celebrate him. But people did not celebrate him the same way then as we do now. And I think we would not really like him as much, because I think if he came into our communities and he saw what was happening in our communities after all the blood, sweat, and tears that were given, I think he would really chastise the Black community for what's happening. Not, let's just, before we get to police brutality and all of the ethnic bigotry and all of that, and I'm not going to deny that does exist. Yes, it does. I know a lot of conservatives will try to play it down. It does. There are instances where it is ethnic bigotry, and then it's instances where it's just bad policing. There are some police officers who have no business being police officers. They just don't, because they have too many issues. They're abusive at home. They're abusive with their colleagues. They're just bad people. And that has, when you have a bad police officer or a bad cop, that has nothing to do with bigotry. That is just, that person has serious issues and they should not be serving in law enforcement. There are issues, and I'm not going to downplay that, but I'm saying before we start screaming so much and we want the whole world to take us seriously, we have to take ourselves seriously and say, what is happening in our community? You know, when you look at a community such as Chicago or any of these major cities where you have so much crime, you can have 23 homicides in a weekend. And it does not bring down the judgment of the great Al Sharptons and Jesse Jackson. You have a young black boy who is targeted and assassinated. And you don't have these great leaders come into the city and say, you know what, this is enough. We have to take charge and we have to take over what's happening in our community. We have to become angry at the hatred that's in our own community, because the truth is, it's the hatred that we have for other people that's eating us up, and we are killing ourselves because we're angry with other people. But we are punishing ourselves because we're angry, because the man did this to us. So we go and we kill one another. We sell drugs to one another. We rape one another. We're shooting down one another because we're mad at the man. It's not making a lot of sense. And so we're committing all of these crimes. It makes us look a bit schizophrenic, double standard, that we are not angry when such a crime happens, when within our own community, a young child is gunned down, a young lady who does something great, goes to the White House, is honored, and then she comes back home only to lose her life. Where are the leaders that are saying, hey, this is enough? We have to take charge. We are coming in and we're going to say, this is not going to happen anymore. We're not going to allow this to happen in our community. Where is that leadership? Where is that leadership again? We don't have it, because we only go into the communities when we can use propaganda to prop ourselves up. I'm convinced that some of our black leaders don't want peace. They don't want peace, because if they did, they would come into the communities when we are acting up. They don't want us to have peace, because if we can keep this ethnic bigotry going on, it keeps them relevant. Yeah, it keeps them relevant. The more we fight with everyone else and the more everyone has a problem with us, it keeps them relevant. So they come in, they charge their little money, they get on their soapbox, and then what people don't see is that when they get off their soapbox, the very people they complain about, the very people they tell the black community that they have a problem with, what you don't see, or what many times people don't see, is that these people go and have coffee, they hang out with people, they do all of these other things with people. And the truth is, we within the black community need to have a conversation with ourselves and say, hey, when are we going to wake up and handle issues and say that our lives matter? And the truth, it's not just us. Every community has to have that conversation and say, what do we do to make the American life better? Even whites have to have that same conversation and say, what do we do to make life better for Americans, regardless of our ethnicity? Does it make us angry that these sort of things are happening in the American community? When you have white on white crime, black on black crime, Hispanic on Hispanic crime. Why do we have so much crime happening in this nation amongst ourselves? One of the things I think need to happen within the black community is we have to restore pride to the black community. And I know this conversation seems to be more about black people, but it applies to every single community. And it really applies to us as a whole. But as a black person, knowing what our history or what our place in history has been, knowing our story within history, that we have been a people of dignity, of grace, of excellence. We are inventors. We are scientists. We are architects. We are the designer of the capital of the United States, for crying out loud. We have done great things for this nation. Without the black community, this nation would not be what it is. But we are turning on ourselves and we have forgotten who we are. We have forgotten what our ancestors left for us, the pride and the dignity of who we are. We are a great people, and we have to restore that pride to our young people, to remind them, hey, Why are you behaving this? Why do you dress like that? Why do you carry yourself that way? Why would you rather do stuff on the streets instead of putting a book in your hand, educating yourself? Because you are a people of value. We have to tell that to our young people. You are valuable to this nation. This nation actually needs you. How can we expect other people to value us if we no longer know our own value? If our young people don't know their value, if they don't know their part in the larger story, if they don't know that they exist in the greater story, and that means that many of us need to go back and learn our true American history. People say, "Oh, they're only telling one side," but many times the other part is right there. It's looking at us in the face. We're just not researching and sitting down and learning that part of the story. And that comes from a lack of conversation. Because if we would sit down with older people and younger people, India Arie has a song and she talks about people talking amongst themselves. And she says, if young people would talk to older people, what we can learn. If Republican people would talk to Democrats, what we can learn from each other. And that's the truth. We need to sit down and have conversations and learn what's missing. Yes, Black Lives Matter. Yes, all lives matter. Yes, blue lives matter. Every community must take into account that life matters. And if we want people to take the conversation of Black Lives Matter seriously, then that means it has to matter to us first. And I'm not trying to make light of the conversation. It's a legitimate conversation. It's a real conversation. But do we really value? Do we really believe that Black Lives Matter? What are we doing on the universities? We're protesting. But what are we protesting for? The funny thing is I'm reading news stories and now we want to bring back segregation in the name of justice. And I'm trying to figure out where is the sanity. You see, it's because we don't have leaders to really guide us. We don't have leaders of wisdom. We just have agitators. And that's the wrong thing to have. As long as we have agitators and we're angry and we're not looking really for peace, we're just looking to agitate and show, look, this is what you've done to us. We're not really looking for peace. And guess what's going to happen? We're never going to have that peace. We're never going to have the things that we say we want to have. And no one's going to ever believe that we believe Black Lives Matter. Yes, I believe Black Lives Matter. And I believe that it should matter to us first. It has to matter to Black lives. Black lives matter to Black lives. When we honestly make that, the reality of our lives, that our own lives matter, when parents wake up in the morning and realize, I want the best for my children, I will teach them, I will educate them, I will push them, I will discipline them, because their life matters. Because a police officer, he's doing his job and sometimes he's bringing baggage with him. Black or white, Hispanic, Asian, it doesn't matter. They can bring baggage with them. But we have to believe Black Lives Matter first. When we honestly believe that it matters, then we can convince the rest of the world that it matters. But we have to pull up our pants first. We have to stop selling jokes and calling each other names. You know, seriously, I mean, who goes around calling each other a name that says I'm worthless and I'm shiftless, I will never amount to anything? Who goes around and make that a term of endearment? I don't care how we want to say, oh, it's different because we take the ER off and we put the A. I mean, let's be honest here. If we're really honest and we tell the truth, most of the time when Black people from a certain community, when Black people from the urban inner city community, from the hood talk, most of the time we change the ending of a word. So to change it from ER to A is not really like you really changed anything. It's really, you're just speaking the typical language that would be in the hood. You know, we don't say floor in the hood. Well, I'm saying we don't, not like I'm from the hood, but people don't actually say the floor, they say the flow. So does it change what that is? Now the flow is something different than what I walk on because I'm not saying floor, I'm saying flow. I mean, really? Because we add and we take away a letter or two? No, it still means the same thing, because when we say it and our behavior and our action, it's still saying the same thing. And when we become indignant about calling each other names, and we get tired of hearing our young kids calling each other these names, then we're saying our lives matter, because we are a people of pride. We are a people of dignity. We are a people of grace. Black is beautiful. Black has to become gracious. It has to be something we're proud of, that Black lives matter. Hey, I'm all in for the conversation. I believe, truly, honestly believe that Black lives matter. But what I believe is more important is that we believe as a community, that we believe. I don't need white people to believe that my life matter until after I believe it. When I start carrying myself a certain way, when I start to educate myself, even if I can't afford to go to university, when I pick up a book, when I go to the library, when I start digesting knowledge, when I start changing the way I carry myself, I'm telling the world my life matters. And you have no other choice but to respect me. And then when they disrespect us, then we can take to the streets and we can protest with dignity. Not tearing up cities, not tearing up jobs, because when we go in and we tear up the business in our community, we tear up our own jobs. And if we go to another community and tear up their business, we still tear up our jobs, because many times we're working in that other community as well. So what kind of sense does that make for us to go in and tear up somebody else's business? It's our economy, stupid. We're not thinking logically. So if we're going to protest, let's do it with dignity. Let's do it with wisdom. Let's do it with knowledge. Let's take to the streets and say, yes, first of all, we're coming into our own community and we're going to demand. You know, the one thing about the Black Panther movement, and yes, I'm about to give praise to the Black Panther movement. The one thing they did right is they took to the streets within the Black community and they said, if the police is going to come in here and they're going to beat us up because we commit crimes, we'll do it ourselves. So instead of the police coming in and policing our city, our communities, we'll police our communities. And then they started to feed the community. That's what the church should be doing. That's what the Black community should be doing. That's what our leaders should be doing. That's what our educational institutions should be doing. Policing our own community. Feeding and clothing our own community. I hate to say it. The Black Panther movement had something there. And I am not a supporter of the Black Panther movement. But when you make a statement and say we're going to police our own community, because if we don't, someone else is going to come in and they're going to beat us. Someone else is going to come in. They may shoot us. Why don't we do it to ourselves? And we don't have to beat ourselves. We don't have to shoot ourselves. Yeah, let's mean it when we say Black Lives Matter. And let's take charge of our own communities. Let's educate our own communities. Let's feed our own communities. Let's police our own communities. I know this is so very un-Republican. I know it's so unconservative. But the truth is, Black lives do matter. The truth is, all lives matter. The truth is, blue lives matter. But we're talking about Black lives right now, and I'm talking about Black lives mattering to Black lives. I don't know if that was said correctly, but Black lives have to matter to Black lives. That's a better way to put it. Hey, you guys have a wonderful and a blessed night, a wonderful Wednesday. Talk to you again. I know this was a long podcast, but hopefully something was said that matters to you. Give me a buzz on Twitter. You can do that at Global Relations. Tell me what you think. You don't agree with me, that's fine. You can tell me. You do agree with me, that's really great. But let's have that conversation and make our lives matter. Good night.